Wake up, wake up. It is good to have you here, Damon Bruce, Larry Krueger, and the best news I have, it's the best news we've had about the 49ers in months. The preseason's over tonight, Larry. It's all over tonight. It'll be real football after this. One more night of let's see who's on or off this team. Back of the roster spectacular happening this evening in Las Vegas. Good morning.
Man, I'm fired up for today. I am going to have a huge Friday. Obviously, we are doing this extravaganza brought to you by Sam's Chowder House. Go check out Sam's Chowder House. Go get your oysters, Rockefeller. Sit on the water, drink some beers, have some oysters on the patio at Sam's, and tell them that Krug and Bruce sent you. That the Krug and Bruce extravaganza sent you there. So anyway, really excited for this stream with you this morning, and then at 11 this morning, roughly 2 hours from now. The great Chase Sr., who I know you've met because we've done streams, the three of us. I'm going to be jumping on with him later today. I'm going to be doing a hit with Adam Copeland and John Lund and Dennis Brown on the KMBR pregame. I'll do a hit with Tom Tolbert and Kerry Crowley on KMBR. Also tonight around 5:30, and then on the KMBR postgame, and then my own postgame. And somehow, Damon, in between that is going to be like the Niners kick off at 7. Kicking off, I think, at 4 is my 14-year-old's first high school football game.
Oh, well, that's the big one. I mean, that's the one.
And I'm nervous, man. I am nervous. Damon, I watch my kids play sports. You know how much I love watching my kids play sports, but football is the one that it's like a nervous energy. So anyway, they go tonight, and they're for the Northgate High School freshman team goes tonight, I think at 4 or 5, and their first.
Larry, what position's he holding down?
He's just like his big bro. He's just like Kev. He's a wide receiver and a corner.
He should stage a holdout by actually holding in, if you don't mind me saying. And he's like, look, I'm not playing for Northgate for $14.5 million. You got to take care of me. I got parents to raise.
I'm not taking biology this semester. Okay. I'm not doing it. I'll do it next semester when I have more time, but I'm not. And you can talk to my agent, and I'll be sitting out. All school functions and only attending lunch.
Super duper.
So anyway, tonight, go Christopher. First high school football game ever. I gave him the only advice I would give any high school kid, Damon. See what you hit. That's all. Don't lower your head like a battering ram. See what you hit. If you see what you hit and you play under control, play fast, play physical, play violent, but see what you hit.
The most important part of the game is coming home uninjured.
Yes.
So let's all root for that. Come home uninjured. And if you're a 49ers fan, even though a lot of the guys who are playing week 1 won't be on the field in this one, you want everybody to come off that field uninjured. By the way, speaking of on-field injuries, Larry, let's start with some good news. If anyone was watching some preseason football last night, very scary moment at Arrowhead when Bears cornerback Douglas Coleman had to be removed from the field on a backboard, and he was brought to the hospital, and everyone's taking a knee, and those are the scary hold your breath moments in football. Very happy to report movement in all of his extremities. His night in the hospital was a very good night. So anyone who got a little bit of a scare, because we always get scared by some of this sometimes in football, I almost see that back brace and I think to myself, good, an abundance of caution is what they're using right here. And chances are this player is going to be okay. And sure enough, he was, and thank goodness, because that's an awful way to start a year.
Yeah. I watched some of that game last night and I didn't catch that. Was that towards the end?
I think it was right in the first drive of the second half.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't see it. That, this is the one part about preseason football that is, I think, a little bit more dangerous than regular season football. And you say, well, what exactly is it about the preseason that's inherently more dangerous than the regular season? in the preseason, some guys are playing like it's Super Bowl Sunday because it is for them. And other guys are just trying to shake off the rust and get ready for week one without getting hurt or without sacrificing something. You know what I mean? So you've got different agendas in August. And some guys, are all about it. And other guys are trying to ease into it. And it's just it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. So we've seen a lot of terrible injuries. I can remember going way back, Niners Raiders, the Napoleon McCollum blowout of his knee in a preseason game, and it's just like, oh God, really? Yeah. But it is necessary. Then the people will always ask the question: are the games necessary? Yeah, they are. They're necessary because football is 22 guys, 11 guys on the side. It has to be choreographed. It has to be worked on. It has to be repped on the field. So that's one. And two, it's just an inherently a violent sport. It is what it is. So it's, they've tried to make it safer. They have made it safer. And they've made it a lot safer. And they've done a lot of good things in the last 10 years.
I don't think I've seen it on the field so far in the preseason. Is any 49er going to be wearing the Guardian cap in regular season games? Because I know that that's available to football players this year. If you want to wear a Guardian cap in the game, you can. Is a single 49er going to exercise that?
I don't know, but I will say this. It looks awful. If every player in the league did wear the Guardian cap, the game would be less popular. And it would look worse. It wouldn't televise as well. It wouldn't be. Maybe it would be a little bit safer.
The helmet is a sacrosanct piece of the sports uniform. The football helmet is the most sacred element of football beyond the actual football itself, right? I mean, it's what the sport is known for. So we attach all sorts of romance to these helmets. What I hope to see is, Guardian Cap 3.0, 4.0, as they continue to re-engineer these things to look better, to fit the game better. I'm sure the Guardian Cap and the helmet will be safer 5 years from now than it is today.
I would imagine you could at some point probably put some form of a human being shock absorber in the material that's made up of the helmet and make it, almost 100 times safer than it is right now. But I mean, the technology's not quite there. We're not in the leather helmet days, but we are in the leather helmet days when it comes to helmet technology compared to where I think we're going to be in like 20 years.
I would agree.
We're going to see a safer version of the football helmet introduced that makes the sport safer on all three levels: high school, pros, college.
You're seeing some radical helmet redesigns. The helmet that Kittle wears, the helmet that Bosa wears, with it looks like they've got the John Olerud extra helmet there's an extra,
like an extra frontal lobe on their helmet. It's ugly. It looks awful. I mean, it's bad, but we'll trade aesthetics for safety of the players. If you really claim to love the players that you support, then you should be all about trying to make this safer. And I think we all are. But the aesthetics of the cloth helmet that goes on top of the metal, on top of the plastic, whatever.
Larry, you're glitching. You glitch so hard right now. How come this happens? Does it take like your wireless or your Wi-Fi a little time to wake up in the morning? Because when I watch your other videos, like, I don't see this happen with anyone else but me.
I didn't even see what happened.
You got all glitchy there for a second.
I saw it went dark for a second.
Now you're back.
I'm not sure what happened there. I haven't had too many. The mic. I'm having a problem with my mic. That's what I'm having a problem with. This is Invader 49er, says Larry, breaking up.
All I can tell you is it's the preseason. If we're gonna have any glitches, get them out now, Larry. It's like 49er football. You're gonna make any mistakes, get them out now before it starts, before that Sam's sponsorship kicks in for real on September 1st. Get your glitches out now, man.
Well, it's funny. I think I'm probably post stream gonna hit Best Buy and go get a new cord, because I get the feeling these phone cords that I use, they, you use them and plug them and unplug them and all that. I think after a while they get a little wonky, and I think I'm due for a new cord. So I think I'll probably do that today.
I'm very excited about your new cord. I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it in action.
It's going to be an amazing cord.
Okay, this is going to be a little crass, but if everybody in the chat is being honest, I think that they'll agree. 49ers and Raiders, this game was so much more interesting for the final preseason game when it was San Francisco versus Oakland. Like, this is a little crass, but I'm going to say it. Did a Raider-Niner preseason game even happen unless somebody's getting jumped in the bathroom for something they said? Like, this is such a tame version of where this, and it's probably good it is getting a little tamer, because for a while
didn't somebody die?
Well, I don't know if anyone died, but I think someone did get stabbed. Someone was shot at, I don't know, the night at Candlestick. It was about 13 years ago, in that last 49er Raider Candlestick preseason game. That parking lot got hairy at the end of that night. I remember JT the Brick calling in the show that I was hosting on KNBR that night and just saying, Damon, it is freaking Mad Max beyond Thunderdome out here. He's like, I'm pretty sure somebody just biked past me waving a gun indiscriminately at every car. I mean, it got a little out of control. What had happened, this is the JT O'Sullivan era, and JT O'Sullivan wore number 14. And number 14 is big in a Mexican gang called the Norteñas, because the 14th letter of the alphabet is the letter N, which stands for Norteñas. So you had all of these dudes with like neck prison tats. You had like a whole bunch of guys who totally looked like a Mexican gang, all of them rocking JT O'Sullivan jerseys. You're like, they really like JT. They're getting behind this new guy. It really was nothing more than a display of gang unity, but it was a little hairy at Candlestick. And I think that unfortunate time helped hasten the end of Candlestick and made the 49ers feel good about getting out of there, when it really was. It was a great park when people weren't getting stabbed and shot at. It really was.
I mean, it was Candlestick for football was opened, the year I was born. And it's old at this point, it needed to be replaced. And, there's a lot of great memories there, but not until 1981 for the most part. All the memories before 81 at Candlestick were of colossal defeats at the hands of the Cowboys and gag jobs in the early 70s. So it wasn't this sweet, special, wonderful place until Joe Montana showed up and made it that. So, it's just, to me, the memories will stay. It's sad that they knocked it down. I do remember walking out the final night, passing multiple raccoons rolling up the escalator as I was rolling out of the escalator.
But that pick of the stick was special. What an ending. What a curtain call for that.
Navarro Bowman ran right by me. I was literally standing at the 10-yard line.
It was awesome.
In those days, they used to have the media come down with like 5 minutes left and stand on the sideline so we could make the trek down the right field line for the baseball configuration to walk into the football clubhouse.
Right. Well, it's the only park in America where you had to walk through the stands to get to the field.
Right. It was wild. It was wild. I mean, I can remember walking through those stands, not to mention the elevator from the press box could hold like about 2 people.
Right.
And it was like the smallest elevator of all time. I mean, nobody thought it through at all. Now there's banks of elevators with, for 4 options, and they're all bigger than the one that they used to have. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? Time moves on and improvement happens, and Niners Raiders, I'm glad we're getting it. It's a great uniform game. There's been so many players from Plunkett to others, Roger Craig, Ronnie Lott, who played for both teams, Matt Millen. And I'm looking forward to this one tonight. And Shanahan says he'll play the starters. He's told them he's going to play them, get ready to play a half. He went on the radio and said a quarter and a half would be kind of what he's aiming for. I think what you're going to get in this game is right before kickoff, right in that final TV timeout, they're going to announce, and the 49ers today will be sitting out, and they'll name, I would say, 5 to 7 players that won't be playing, and they'll all be really good players. Right. So Shanahan told everybody they're going to suit up. They'll all warm up to shake off the rust. But then I would say, like last year, Greenlaw and like 5 other dudes were given like that week 3 of the preseason off, and it'll happen again tonight.
You called this on Monday, Isaac Guerendo week, and we're probably going to see him. And I hope he does get 10, 12, 15 touches tonight and a real opportunity to show us what he's got. How has Guerendo week been for Isaac Guerendo? You've been at practice every day this week, Larry. What have you seen?
Well, he looks good. I mean, he's big, strong, fast. He's kind of built body type wise. If you've ever watched drag racing, where, you've got kind of a big, kind of a big back end to your drag racer, and it just starts cooking straight down the line. And it's just, you see the smoke and the power coming from the engine in the back. Well, that's kind of the way Guerendo's built. He's got huge legs, huge lower half, and he is explosive. Now, he shows explosive speed, and it's easy to identify that by the naked eye, right? So you go, wow, that's impressive. But, if you watch closely, he's very, very raw. And he doesn't pick his holes well. He doesn't read his blocks well. Doesn't have a lot of the basic instincts that, great running backs have. So I'm eager to see him tonight. I'm eager to see him flash a big play. Can his size and speed and strength get him on the roster over Cody Schrader and the rest of the backs, Patrick Taylor? Taylor and Guerendo were the guys who took the carries most this week. In the past weeks, it had been CMC before. Then he got hurt. Then it was a lot of Mason. But this week it's been hardly as much of Schrader and Mason and a lot more of Taylor and Guerendo. So I would expect to see that duo tonight.
When you talk about the names that you expect to maybe play tonight, and then all of a sudden they are a, kickoff scratch, if you will, do you think either Mustafa or Pooney, 2 ascending rookies, are going to get that starter's treatment tonight and be held out of action? I would like to see reps for Mustafa and Pooney. I'm also totally cool with the 49ers saying, we're putting you dudes on ice. We'll see you on the 9th.
Yeah, my guess is the last second sit list will be Debo, Jennings, Kittle, Mason, Juszczyk. Those 5 on offense for sure.
Well, and how about Brock Purdy? Is Brock Purdy going to go out there behind a cobbled together offensive line again? That just feels a little too risky for my liking.
Probably Purdy. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe Mooney, Fred, and Nick on offense, and Hargrave. So just your essential guys. You get 5 or 6 guys on each side of the ball, offense and defense. Those guys are going to sit it out. And they won't announce it until, right before the anthem. But the big story this morning is that the Brandon Aiyuk story looks like it is, taking another unbelievable turn. And now it sounds like the Commanders are very much in it. And the deal that we just saw the Commanders make, it's now been speculated by a couple people this morning that the deal that the Commanders made yesterday that sent Jahan Dotson to the Eagles and gave the Commanders an extra 3rd-round pick, there are some people that are speculating that trade was made to give the Commanders an extra draft pick that they could then turn around and flip to the Niners in an Aiyuk trade. So, I mean, think about it. When you look at that trade that the Eagles and Redskins or Commanders just made makes no sense. No sense
for Howie Roseman.
No, but I mean, it makes great sense for the Eagles. It makes no sense for the Commanders. You just drafted this guy in the middle of the first round. You don't have a super deep receiving core. Like, you don't need him. It has to be that they're clearing out money and roster space and getting draft capital in another deal involving Aiyuk. So, yeah, if you ask me today, Damon, 9:25 in the morning on the 23rd of August, as we've watched this story daily for months, where do I think it's going? I think if this was getting done, it would have been done. If they were going to travel the distance that they were going to travel to get this deal, these two sides together, it would have happened. Now there's 11th hour rumblings that maybe there's an ownership hang up between the 49ers, that maybe Parag or Jed or the ownership is somehow has a say and maybe doesn't want to throw the kinds of dollars that Aiyuk is going to command here to him. And so that may be hiding behind Lynch and Shanahan, maybe Jed and Parag, with some demand or some belief or some desire that we are totally unaware of. But I think this makes sense now, to at least from the Commander side, right? They got that extra pick. They created some roster room. They got rid of an expensive receiver that wasn't really doing it. They've created a spot for Aiyuk. Now the question is, what is the compensation going to look like coming back to the Niners? And I will say it again. If John Lynch gets a second and a third round pick for Brandon Aiyuk and he goes to the Commanders, that's a loss.
Yes.
There's no way around that. I love John Lynch. I believe in John Lynch. I think he's a great face of the franchise. I'm thrilled that John Lynch is associated with the 49ers. I think he's proven himself to be a good GM. If he gets nothing back that can help them win and trades Brandon Aiyuk inside their Super Bowl window, that's a loss. And there's no way to hide that.
I wouldn't have wanted the Aiyuk trade without a player in return. And Dotson is probably the player that would have come back to the 49ers. So I feel like if the Commanders moved Dotson to get a pick, they kind of reverse engineered their way out of this trade, because I would have needed the player more than the pick if I'm the 49ers. So I don't know, man.
Unless the Niners didn't want Dotson. Look, I mean, I think, who knows?
Larry, I think that there's a lot of trying to thread one needle through the other here. I don't know if they're connected. And if you're telling me the Washington Commanders called Howie Roseman to execute this trade, I might believe you. I think this all came from Howie Roseman to the Commanders. And
just before you go too far down the road there, before the show started, Kev and I were kind of chopping it up in the kitchen, and he said that there is a report out that connects that trade and that third round draft choice to the 49ers, and that would go to the Niners. So
I'm not saying that there isn't.
There might be some connection here that I don't have it in front of me, Damon, but Kev seemed to think that there was a connection.
Well, look, and I don't mean to be dismissive of whatever Kevin read or thinks he saw, but if I had a nickel for every report on what was going to happen next with Brandon Aiyuk, we wouldn't have to be doing Wake Up. We'd be retired in Barbados right now. I mean, it is ridiculous how inaccurate, how off the mark all the reporting and details have been about this from anyone who has reported anything other than total stalemate, no progress, because that seems to be the only real tangible update of all of this. No one's, let me tell you what's about to happen, has happened. No, nothing.
No, I mean, hey, look, we haven't reached a conclusion yet, right? There's been a lot of talk, but I kind of compare this moment to if you literally went up to Jack and Ozzy and said to them at like 4:00 on December 24th, guys, no Christmas this year, double Christmas next year. If they're 2, they're not going to mind. But if they're Jack's age, they're going to mind. It's going to be a bad situation. You and Jillian are not getting away with that one. You're not getting away with next year we give you 2 Christmases. Actually, Jack, you know what? Next year We're going 3 Christmases. But this year, none. He's going to get mad. And Niner fans, as much as they like John Lynch, you saw that comment there. Somebody said, we get players or we riot. Here it is, right here. Players or we riot. And how could the 49ers? I know they're hot. I know they've been to the Super Bowl a couple times in the last few years. I know they've been to a lot of NFC Championship games. I know John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are very popular. I know the Bay Area media is relatively soft with criticism. But how can the 49ers sell a Brandon Aiyuk for 2025 draft capital to anyone, Damon? To the media, to the fans, to Trent, to Kittle, to Bosa, to anybody who's 28 or older in that Niner locker room, Mooney Ward. How do you sell? We're getting 2025 draft capital back for Brandon Aiyuk on the eve of the season.
Sense. So look, Shanahan
can't be sold. Can't be sold.
Shanahan this week on KNBR sort of tried to make the case for what week 1 without Brandon Aiyuk in the depth chart might look like. And he tried to put a finer point on it and talk about the progress that all these guys have made. And I believe him. Guys get coached up. Guys improve. The player you were last year isn't necessarily the player you're going to be next year. More volume, more reps, all that stuff can change a player's developmental arc drastically. But here's where you are. Like, I just want you to take all 49er fandom out of this equation. So let's pretend you are a Minnesota Vikings fan just looking at the 49ers for potential like fantasy options at wide receiver. Okay. So you are a independent of the 49er fan just looking at the roster. And here's what you see without Brandon Aiyuk in this wide receiver depth chart. Deebo Samuel, nothing to talk about. NFL stud. If he stays healthy,
having a great camp, having an awesome camp. Yeah.
Deebo is bona fide. We ain't worried about that guy. So Juwan Jennings is a player that every 49er fan loves. Third and Juwan is a great little nickname for him, but he is completely dismissible unless you are rooting for him because you're a 49er fan. He is a wide receiver with 19 catches, which means he's hardly an NFL wide receiver. That's what he was last year. No. But he's
not hardly an NFL wide receiver. He might be their most clutch guy. Okay, let's be honest. He was the MVP of the Super Bowl if they win the game.
Production-wise, he was a 19 catch. Nobody won a single game if he was on your fantasy team. He was not a factor. 19 catches.
Juwan Jennings. I hear you. But Juwan Jennings. Forget some guys. I mean, it's like Freddie Solomon caught a lot of balls. He was great. Dwight Clark had the catch, right? I love Juwan. I love what you're saying. You're totally right. He's the third receiver. He doesn't catch a lot of balls. He's not a volume receiver. Niner fans know he's caught some of the biggest balls in Niner history. To just thrust that guy into a much larger role takes a little bit of a leap of faith in the player that you think he's going to be. I think Jedi has described it here perfectly. He makes clutch catches, all 19 of them. So that is equally true. Two sides can be equally true. He does make clutch catches. He does show up on third down, but he had 19 total catches, which is only 19 more than Larry or I. After that, it's Chris Conley. Again, prospect, 31-year-old prospect that everybody seems to like. He certainly ascended in the postseason and played better in the regular season because you can't do much less than 3 regular season catches, and that's all Chris Conley had last year. So it's Deebo Samuel, total stud, 19 catches, 3 catches, and then Ricky Pearsall, who hasn't caught anything other than a non-contact jersey so far in his career. Then you got Jacob Cowing, who, as impressive of a debut as it was last week for him, has never caught a ball in a game that in the NFL that has mattered. Then you got Trent Taylor, and I don't think there's very much to be excited about as a wide receiver in Trent Taylor. And then after that, it's Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, and Robbie Chosen, and all 3 of those guys probably ain't even on the fucking team. So that is not a very deep wide receiver room. It's Deebo Samuel. I first of all, totally disagree. I mean, It's not a deep room. That's all it is a deep room.
Okay,
it's
but
an
it's
incredibly
not an
deep
experienced room. It's not a
Well,
proven room.
There is no team in the NFL that could lose a Brandon Aiyuk and then replace him with another Brandon Aiyuk. The Niners, it's not a depth issue. The Niners have tremendous depth at wide receiver. They're going to wind up cutting guys that other teams will sign. I mean, like, there'll probably be multiple receivers that the Niners say goodbye to that will wind up on a roster somewhere.
After Debo.
It's not about depth.
After Debo with no Brandon Aiyuk, your next two guys up combined are for 22 catches last year.
Yeah, but I mean, that's on a team that has a ton of weapons. JJ's a good receiver. Your fourth receiver, wait a second. Your fourth receiver is a first-round draft choice. Your fifth receiver looked phenomenal for the last week. They have a lot of good receivers. I'm not worried. The depth is good. I mean, Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, Robbie Chosen, those are all borderline NFL. They're borderline NFL starting players. They could play for other teams. There are worse players around the league than those guys.
Right. All three probably aren't even on the team.
Right. I mean, because there's only 5 or 6 receivers are going to make it. I guess the point is you got to have.
How about this? I'll see you in the middle of this conversation. You're right. There's a lot of potential there, but potential isn't proven. Nothing you can play in the NFL until you do it. So we don't know about Pearsall. We hope, but we haven't seen him.
But you're comparing it to the other teams. The other teams don't have this. Let's pick a Ram. We'll go to the Rams. Okay. Rams have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, who's having a nice camp, Tyler Johnson. I'm just saying they have Puka and Kupp and this kid Whittington and Atwell. So those are their 4 receivers. Their fifth, and the rest of these receivers, Drake Stoops, Sam Wiglas, Xavier Smith, JJ Leap. It makes what the Niners back end of receiving core look star-studded. I'm just saying there's a lot. You can't replace the premier guys. When the premier guys are not there, they're not replaceable. That's why they get what they get. That's why they make as much as they make.
All right. So
you're not going to be able to have, if you move Aiyuk, it's obviously going to hurt. But at this point, it's time to move, right? It's time to make something happen. It's August 23rd.
Going back to your point about the Rams. There are so many more catches returning to their team from last year than the 49ers have without Brandon Aiyuk. Puka Nacua caught 105 balls last year. Cooper Kupp caught 59 balls. Tyler Higbee, 47 balls. Tutu Atwell, 39 balls. Tutu Atwell by himself. Kyron Williams, their running back, had more catches than the 49ers' second and third wide receivers on their depth chart as it stands without Brandon Aiyuk.
What's your point?
My point is there's not a lot of there other than, gee, I hope that guy's going to be a really good NFL player right now this year in the year that you're trying to win a Super Bowl. And that is going into a Super Bowl year with hope. And I ain't here for hope in a Super Bowl year. I need proven commodity. And the 49ers have one in Brandon Aiyuk.
2/5 of your wide receiver core are rookies,
which ain't good. Is I guess my point, Larry.
No, it's not. There's nothing wrong with being a rookie. It's called a first year player. There's nothing wrong with being a rookie.
No,
every one of these players has been a rookie.
It comes to being a rookie for Kyle Shanahan, in which case you're probably not on the field very often.
I guess I don't understand the argument because the Niners have more weapons than almost any team in pro football.
I hope you're right. I certainly hope you're right.
Name a team that has more.
So let me tell you, name a team that has less if we're playing a week with no Brandon Aiyuk, Debo got hurt, Kittle got hurt. How you doing that?
I mean, so there's 5 weapons on a team. If you take away 3, you don't have a lot. I mean, what if I take away Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Raheem Mostert from the Dolphins? They're not very good. If I take away Kelsey and Pacheco and Mahomes from the Chiefs, they're not very good. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like this phantom game of let's pretend who's hurt. Obviously, losing a player like Aiyuk, you're not going to replace him with a player like Aiyuk. But the Niners, more so than almost every team in the game, are fortified with quality depth. Pearsall, as I said, was a first-round draft choice. Jacob Cowing is a really, really good young receiver. So, I mean, that's receiver 4 and receiver 5. Conley, I think has played at a really high level both this year and last year. Trent Taylor's a return guy. Danny Gray's just a speed guy. I mean, everybody's got their strength, but I think the depth of the wide receiver core is good.
But the proven depth is non-existent.
Yeah, but that doesn't exist. There is no such thing as proven depth. You can pick any team in pro football. I mean, let's go to any team you want to go to.
How many any team do you want to go to find their last year third wide receiver, and you come back with a grand total of catches lower than 19? I'll give you $1 for every roster. I'll give you $10, Larry, for every roster where last year's WR3 had fewer than 19 catches.
Yeah, but you're talking about a 49er team that throws the ball a lot to the running backs. That is the reason for that. It's not
I'm
like
not interested in the why. You don't have to show your math work here. I'm just talking
there
about.
There you go. You don't want the answer. You're saying it's a problem, but you don't want to hear the answer. The answer is 67 receptions went to your running back. 12 went to Ray McLeod. He's not going to be here this year. 14 went to your fullback. That's 26 receptions for just Ray and Juszczyk. So that impacted the situation. 83 targets for Christian McCaffrey impacted the situation. Jawan Jennings is a really good receiver, and I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, because he had 19 targets, he has no value. Come on, he's a really good player. If anything, he might have been, when the money was on the table, who stood up and played the biggest? JJ.
But I think that to look at this room and say, yeah, without Aiyuk, nothing to worry about, is looking at this through rose-colored glasses. And the tribe says,
who's saying that? That's the ultimate straw man. Who is saying without Aiyuk, no problem? I'd love to see that person. I haven't heard. I have never said. I'm saying without Aiyuk, there's no problem. I'm not saying that. You think I'm saying that? I'm not saying that.
Okay, well, you are dismissing a lack of on-field production as if it is absolutely nothing to worry about.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Is Kyle's wide receiver rotation and style of game planning. I hope you're right. I hope that
he is their number one receiver. That's why they have to get something.
Jennings or Conley will be able to answer that bell. Ricky Pearsall, I'm not labeling him a bust. I'm not labeling him a success. How could anybody label him anything other than too hurt to play football without having been hit yet? It's a little concerning. I don't
understand what your point is. What's your point? Is your point,
my point is sign Brandon Aiyuk? I guess that's my point. My point is sign Brandon Aiyuk if you want to be a team to be taken seriously. And oh, by the way, the second you're done with that, you go sign Trent Williams. The final if you had told me the day after the Super Bowl that Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk would be not reporting for duty with the most amount of cap space in the NFL, I would tell you there's no way. You got to be nuts. There's no way this team would allow that to happen in such a precious football season. Yet here we are. It is the third and final preseason game kicking off in a few hours tonight, and neither dude has even touched his toes to stretch one out in practice yet. That's not good. It's just not good.
It's a holdout. It's a business holdout. It's a business dispute. I'd love to have seen them get it done by now. But as far as deadlines and that kind of thing, I mean, this is the way it goes. Bosa signed last year, 5 days before the deadline. It wasn't a good thing for his season, but that's the way it goes. I guess we could sit there and throw blame at Parag. It's easy to blame Parag. He doesn't play anything, and he's a business guy, and so it's easy to blame Parag. So people will. But in reality, it seems like Brandon's not been really 100% clear with what he wants. And I think that's fair. I mean, if he were sitting right here, there's lots of examples. He demanded a trade. He told us in a podcast that we all watched on TV that he wanted the biggest bag. But then when the Patriots came with the biggest bag, he didn't want the Patriots. So did he really want the biggest bag? No.
What did he want?
So then did he want the second biggest bag? Because it sounded like the Steelers came with the second biggest bag. But did he want the second biggest bag? Well, yeah, he kind of did. But then when the Steelers number was close to 28, then suddenly there's reports from Garofalo that he's always wanted to be a Niner and he's never wanted to be anywhere else. And then he's got Debo telling Kay Adams he's going to be here. And then he's holding in and hanging out at practice and, dapping up the coach, dapping up the GM. I mean, this thing, it's sad. I get the feeling that we've all been played by Brandon for the highlight, real documentary he's trying to make out of this.
This better be an IMAX. It better be the best sports documentary I've ever watched in my life.
I mean, I just feel manipulated by this stupid, idea of a documentary about this. But it also just kind of feels like I'm not going to only blame Brandon. I feel like Brandon doesn't know what he wants. I feel like the 49ers are trying to serve multiple masters. I think the 49ers know they're going to pay Brock Purdy and really don't want to pay Brandon Aiyuk and would rather trade him down the road, but then they want to get fair value because they don't want to get raked over the coals by the fans or the media or their own locker room for making a bad trade. So they don't want to make a bad trade, but they don't want to sign him either because then that makes it more difficult, their cap situation more difficult going forward next year. So I kind of think, and they know the fans, they know they can't just kiss him off for nothing. And they know the fans are watching, and they know the fans realize that they probably could have gotten players or more compensation months ago than they can get right now. So Lynch doesn't want to be the loser. Parag doesn't want to be the loser. The team that's trading for Aiyuk doesn't want to be the loser. So it's like Aiyuk doesn't want to look bad. I mean, it's just, we've got all these factors here, and I just feel like the Niners are trying to win the trade, win the contract, win the PR release, win, and yet a lot of these decisions have a loss at the end of them. So,
and I guess
it's going to be a very interesting couple weeks.
I guess like my advice,
maybe not, maybe
walk into the room. If I were able to walk in the room and offer a little grand sage advice, I'd say all those little wins that Larry was just talking about right there, none of them matter. The only win that matters is winning the Super Bowl. That's it. So no matter who's got to eat a big double shit sandwich to do that, here's the sandwich. Do it. Do it. I don't care anymore. I just figure it out. You can bang all this math out on the back end of the year. What are you dicking around for? You're trying to win a Super Bowl, I thought. So,
well, because they're trying to manage the cap. So they, none of these decisions get played in a vacuum because they come one at a time. So right now the vacuum is Brandon Aiyuk, and it's easy for people to be like, just pay him, just pay him. Yeah, you know what? That's easy to say. But what you're really saying is what you're not saying is just pay him and don't pay Aaron Banks and don't pay Demo Lenore and don't pay Mooney Ward. That's really what you're saying. Nobody wants to say that because that's not as compelling of a take. It's much more compelling to be like, just pay him, just pay him. But you know what? You can't pay everybody.
If the Niners won the Super Bowl this year and all three of those players vanished from the face of the earth the following year, who cares? I mean, I don't mean to be that rude about it, but it's
best player there might be Lenore.
You can only play one season at a time. You want to be making decisions that help the next season roll in easier. I don't think the 49ers exist in that space. I don't think the 49ers.
Let me ask you a question. Do you and your wife have a savings account?
We do.
Why? What do you have a savings account for? It's all about today.
No, and thank God.
Why have a savings account? Savings account's about tomorrow.
Larry, the reason why we have a savings account,
we got to win today.
Survive through this year. Without that savings account, my layoff would have been a crippling defeat for my family. But because
you're getting way too serious. I'm just saying
we are all using that savings account right now to survive today.
I get you. And the 49, so there is a value in saving for a rainy day.
The planning that we were doing, the money that we were setting aside for first year of college, for a downstairs rebuild and more construction, so we had more room to raise all of those plans got scrapped. we're saving for college. We're saving for downstairs construction. We're saving for a new railing because our one is about to fall off. We're saving for all of the grand plans for what we're doing tomorrow had to be adjusted to make it through today. We are in.
But you still have a savings account.
It's depleted.
And without it, you'd be sunk. You just described it. So that's all the Niners are saying is like, hey, we don't want to drive our team off. They want to win the Super Bowl this year. It's the only Super Bowl they can win is this year's Super Bowl. Okay? That's logical. But they want to win next year. And they want to be available to win the third year and the fourth year. So you have to have one eye on the present and one eye on the future. That is the job of a general manager. And so even though it's very popular to say, sign the guy who's a free agent right now, sign him. We got a game on Sunday. You're also looking at, both your starting corners and maybe a couple of your starting linemen. So there is going to be, it's a hard cap, and there's going to be and they have a lot of receivers. And wait a second, and you're paying. Wait a second. You're now opting to pay a wide receiver. This would be the second wide receiver that you've paid enormously. You pass the least. You run the most. You play the slowest pace. There's all kinds of reasons that make sense that you should not pay this player.
Then they should have walked away months ago.
That's a different argument.
Gray area that's killing them.
That's a different argument. And I agree with you on that one. I agree with you. They should have done this earlier.
So here you are. They basically painted themselves into the corner of we now must have the player because any option that the player could return to us isn't as valuable as the player. Well, we're going to have to pay too much to keep the player. Well, that's the neighborhood you live in. I'm sorry. You wanted to live in Seacliff. You don't get to pay anything other than high prices to do that. And the truth is Trent Williams is more important than probably Brandon Aiyuk. And we've spent so much time focusing on Brandon Aiyuk, and that's probably the wrong place to put the focus. But we've been told, hey, well, you really don't have to worry because there's a little wink and a smile agreement that he's going to miss the preseason because he's Trent Williams and he doesn't need that anymore.
Yeah, we're just reading it for what it is. The Niners are not as concerned about Trent, which is why we are not as concerned about Trent, which is why the fans are not as concerned about Trent, because it all has this, wink and a smile. We knew this was coming. Trent knew this was coming. I don't know. If you ask me if I got to bet everything I got on which Niner between Trent and Aiyuk is there on opening day against the Jets, neither, both, or one or the other, I'd probably put my money on Trent and not Aiyuk because it just doesn't seem like Ayuk's going to be there. But I do think Trent's going to be there.
The staggering amount of Brock Purdy negligence that is baked into that. They can't start the year without Trent Williams. And if they do, they deserve whatever happens. They really do.
Well, they're in a pickle. It's like it's like that decision the Lions had a few years ago. Do they go with the receiver? Do they go with the tackle? And it's like, that's the Niners are literally, it's not a draft choice, but it's basically the same kind of thing. It's like, man, you got only so much cap room. You want to help Brock. What helps Brock more? Trent or Aiyuk? Well, I would say Ayuk's really, really valuable since he's number one receiver. But if there's no time to drop back and you've got
the other guy helps in your lap, stay alive.
You got to protect before you can, you can talk about receivers, but you got to pass protect to utilize them. So there's that. So but their situation right now, it sounds like the Commanders are getting ready to make an offer. And, we were talking about this the other day in one of the other streams. It's easy to picture Aiyuk not being here. And it just doesn't seem like if they wanted him here, I just think that he was going to be here. And if he wanted to be here, it would have been done by now. I think what's not being said and not being told is that there was some harsh dialogue between Kyle Shanahan and Brandon Aiyuk, or Kyle Shanahan and Brandon Ayuk's representative, or the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk's representative. And there is some fracturing there. Now, John Lynch denied it when he was asked about it. He said, "Oh no, it's just hard negotiation and this and that."
Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that you deny publicly. Whether
it's his interpretation of it, right? Who knows? Right. I mean, let's ask Brandon. Let's see what he thinks. And they might have been so fatalistic about this deal getting done, or so negative about the chances, or just so negative about him and his relative value, that maybe he's taking it personally. I've heard Lynch say it at least 3 times, and I've heard Shanahan say it at least twice, that this is Brandon's first time through this. So they're making it seem like this is old hat for us. We do this all the time. This is his first go around. He's not used to it. He's sensitive. He's bothered by a lot of these things. It's taken all kinds of weird turns in the negotiations because of it. And I just get the feeling that if Aiyuk wanted to be a Niner, it would be done by now. And if they wanted him to be a Niner, it would be done right by now. And I just think that even though they don't want to say it because they know how popular he is and there's a whole PR aspect to this, I think they'd rather trade him and get down the road and free up the cap room and free up the wide receiver spot than sign him. They just don't want to get burned with a bad deal, and they know that the fans will roast them if they do. So that's, I think, where we're at. Now, hopefully a good deal could be made. Now, what would I want? I'd want Jonathan Allen, because to me, that's what the Niners' real need is. It's not wide receiver. It's defensive line. I'd want Jonathan Allen. I also really like the tight end from K-State, the rookie Ben Sinnott. The 49ers do not have a second tight end. They really don't. And Sinnott would be fantastic. And I also like Emmanuel Forbes, who's a long-armed corner who breaks on the ball well. And I like McCaffrey's brother. Some combination of those players, or a player and a pick, maybe a Sinnott in a third, or Jonathan Allen in a fourth, or I don't know, but some combination of a pick and one of those players, I think, would probably get it done. It's time. It's go time. It's time to move off of this it's just time to move off of this. I mean, it's just
for us as well. For us as well. We don't want to waste any more time here talking about the maybe that has surrounded this entire preseason for the 49ers. That there is a very jarring fact. Sometimes when you hear it said that way, you go, damn, I can't believe it. Matt Barrows had this in a column. Brandon Aiyuk hasn't actually practiced with the 49ers since the team was prepping for the Super Bowl at UNLV. That's amazing. That's just incredible that is an actual fact, that this team allowed to become an actual fact on the way up to a year that feels like your last best chance to win a Super Bowl with the team built as is.
Here's a bigger fact. Here's a better fact, or I think a more pressing fact.
That this is the best wake-up show in the San Francisco Bay Area? Is that it from Rob?
Well, there's that. No, I think the bigger fact is that the 49ers, according to multiple reports, had a face-to-face meeting with Aiyuk, I believe 3 or 4 days ago, and he has not been seen at practice since. Since they had their last meeting, supposedly, the reporting, Damon. 4 or 5 days ago, the reporting was momentum, right? Momentum with the Niners and Aiyuk.
Of colored T-shirts. We were getting updates of 3-step handshakes and daps, and how many fist pounds Shanahan gave Aiyuk on the bro hug. I mean, yes, it was ridiculous.
They were on the doorstep of finality, it seemed. They had a significant meeting. He has not been at practice since. So, and then since that point, we've now seen the Commanders re-enter the equation. So, I don't know. My head is spun. I'm like all of you. I've got a million different thoughts on this. I agree with JT the Brick, who came on the show and said without Aiyuk this year and with no replacement, like you just take away Aiyuk for picks, let's just say, the Niners are not a Super Bowl contender. And that's how I believe. I think they have, I tweeted it yesterday, 0 chance at the Super Bowl without Brandon Aiyuk. So and it's not that the 49ers are bad. It's just that that's how hard it is to go to the Super Bowl.
Let me ask you this then. If you really think that the chances of the 49ers going from league favorite to zero chance of winning the Super Bowl with the one roster move, why wouldn't you pay him just $30 million to get it done?
Yeah, I hear you.
Because you were just arguing with me that I'm not thinking 3 steps ahead and down the road and Aaron Banks. And
we're talking about different things. We're talking about different things. We're talking about what the 49ers would do and what I would do. Different. These are not the same things.
Right. Well,
I've said for months that I believe if I've got to side with the Niners or Aiyuk, I'm siding with Aiyuk. I've told you that many times. And the reason for it is Aiyuk does not control his environment. He only controls his effort, and his effort is spectacular. He's been healthy. He's put out effort. He is the best wide receiver in the game today if you want to run the ball like the Niners do. And he is on a team that plays one of the slowest paces in pro football, has a ton of other weapons, and, it passes the ball less than any other team in the game. And none of those factors did he have anything to do with. They all put a drag on his numbers. So don't stare a guy in the face and say, you know what? We don't want to pay you because your numbers aren't quite right. And then have like 5 things that deflate his numbers that he doesn't control, that you do control. And then say, we don't want to pay you because you're not quite the statistical monster that some of these other guys are. As you're playing at a slow pace, handing it endlessly to CMC. You know what I mean? It just, so I side with Brandon. I think they ought to pay him. I'm with you in that I think I would extend for him. But I understand where the Niners are coming from because they're looking at Brock Purdy, the biggest jump in the history of the NFL salary cap.
I think it's the biggest jump in the history of year-over-year North American sports, Larry.
Yeah. I mean, he's making so much more money that it has to be accounted for. So I do understand, but I also kind of think if you said to me, do you think it's personal? Yeah, I do. I think it's personal. I think it's gotten personal. I think there's something about Aiyuk that Shanahan, rubs Shanahan wrong. I think there's something about Kyle that rubs Aiyuk wrong. I know Lynch denied it, but I think there's probably some personal bad feelings. Otherwise, Aiyuk, sign already.
Right.
But he doesn't want to sign, and he keeps wanting to go elsewhere. And it doesn't sound, sometimes elsewhere is like, hey, I don't really want to go elsewhere. I just want to get more money here. His elsewhere demands almost seem like he wants to be elsewhere.
Right. It's not a game of chicken. It's
not about money. It's like, get me out of here.
It's so weird. But when given the opportunity to get out for more money,
Patriots.
He turned it down. So again, what would you say it is you want here? I honestly, not another sentence about this situation. Not another sentence.
The whole thing sickens me.
We are on the eve, not the eve, but this evening, it's the final preseason game. Every NFL roster will be down to 53 players by Tuesday next week, which means Wednesday's wake up, Larry. For the very first time, we will have this 53-man roster. What do you think is the biggest surprise we will see on this roster, if there are any surprises on this roster? And will it be a surprise of addition or subtraction? What name will be the most surprising name next Tuesday when we get rosters?
Wow. That is a question. Yeah, that is a good question. What name? Say it again. What name will be the biggest surprise, either on or off?
Yes, the biggest. Okay, so the biggest roster surprise will either be a surprise of addition or subtraction. Let's just start there.
Yeah. Oh man, that is hard because you got to look for somebody who's not going to make it that a lot of people think is going to make it.
Or the other way around. You know who I think with this Brandon Aiyuk situation is now on the team? Trent Taylor. I think Trent Taylor's going from you're probably the 54th or 55th guy to you are the 52nd, 53rd guy.
Wow, this is really difficult because, well, I guess I would have to say this is the moment, and I don't know if it's a surprise, but I think this is the moment they start to, admit some of the mistakes, right? So I think they're going to cut Cam Latu, third-round pick in 2023. They're going to cut him. They're going to cut Danny Gray, third-round pick in 2022. So they're going to cut their last 2 third-round picks at the deadline, at the cutdown. And I don't know if that's a surprise to anybody. It's probably not a surprise to anybody, but that is pretty dramatic.
It's certainly a disappointment. That's for sure.
It is. It's very disappointing. I would say there's probably going to be a good linebacker cut. So I'm going to say Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's been a very consistent 49er. I think they go with Bethune as the last linebacker. You got Graham and Robinson and Winters and Warner and Campbell. Greenlaw's on the pup. So you got 5, and that means there's Flanagan, Fowles, and Bethune fighting for one spot. And I think they're going to give it to the rookie and cut Flanagan, Fowles. So I think that's going to be a high-profile cut. I think Ambry Thomas is going to be traded. That would be my guess. I don't think he'll be cut. I think he'll be traded. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ambry Thomas, if there was a trade with the Commanders, if Ambry Thomas was in that trade, because I know Adam Peters really banged the table loudly for Ambry Thomas in the 2021 lead up to the draft. That's another guy. So they're going to cut they're either going to cut or trade their last 3 third-round picks: Ambry Thomas, Cam Latu, and Danny Gray. That's pretty dramatic. But I would say Ambry Thomas is probably the guy on the outside looking in. And maybe Hufanga is not going to be ready to roll initially. And then I'm also kind of wondering about Wishnowsky initially. Presley Harvin looked really good, and Wishnowski's got knee tendonitis.
Like, what's the savings if they flip what's guaranteed money left on Wishnowski's deal? How much are they, putting themselves in a tough cap position by trading one punter for a lesser paid punter?
I don't know. I can look.
By the way, I'd advise a little caution doing that, unless you got a hurt punter, in which case find me a more useless player in the world of sports than a hurt punter. But Wishnowski's a stud as a punter. He really is. I've loved what Presley Harvin has done here, but I don't think I would make that bet if I'm the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, the other guy that I'm looking for is maybe it's Ambry. A lot of people think it's Womack, but I like Womack. I hope they don't cut Womack. And then the other thing, and I was mentioning this to Dieter last night. This is the time of year where you start to see like these mini trades involving, hey, this guy's not going to make our roster, and that guy's not going to make your roster, and I want that guy, and you want this guy. Why don't we make a deal? There's all these like little mini trades and transactions. I'm eager to see if the Niners, at the cutdown is kind of a reshuffling, if you will, if they find guys on the street at certain spots, maybe at defensive line, maybe in a couple other spots that might be better than the guys that they have. We haven't seen a lot of that because the Niners have been one of the better talent-laden teams. But I was looking at an article last night with Dieter about the Chargers cut down, and a couple people think that Jerry Rice's kid, Brendan Rice, and Kamani Vidal, who's a really underrated rookie running back, that the Chargers may cut both those guys. And Dieter's a huge fan of Vidal, who's only fumbled, I think, once ever. And I kind of like Rice's kid. So, and that's just an example. There's every team in the league is going to pair from 90 to 53. It's all one cut deal. So I would say it's highly likely that there probably somebody who gets cut that the Niners have a pretty high, rating on, and they bring that guy in. And I would not be surprised if they go outside the roster and bring in a defensive lineman of note, and maybe even trade some draft capital to do it. Because when they lost Drake Jackson, they lost their 5th defensive end. They have no depth there, and they really could use one more defensive end behind the front four. The fourth guy's Beal. They need probably one more defensive end, and it's probably nobody in this camp.
I'm still thinking about if they really cut another third round pick. I mean, we're going to have to come up with a list called like the Trey Sermon All-Stars of just bad third round choices by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan, the general manager, has not been the best friend to Kyle Shanahan, the head coach. Really,
they've made some mistakes for sure. And now, it just feels like Aiyuk to the Commanders has been the play. I mean, they've got over $37 million in cap room. They got plenty of money to sign him to a long-term deal. It's the beginning of their regime, but they're also really trying to hit the ground running.
It'd be the perfect end for the documentary too. You'd have Brandon Aiyuk and Jalen Daniels, just skipping off into the sunset, up a hill, holding hands. You're going to be the best quarterback I ever played with. I know, buddy. I'm here for you.
But it is interesting because yesterday's Jahan Dotson trade, from Washington's perspective, made very little sense. But if you are going to turn around and trade that third round draft choice in a bigger deal in a couple days for Brandon Aiyuk, now the Jahan Dotson to the Eagles trade makes perfect sense.
Right. And it doesn't make any sense for the 49ers at that point, but at least it will have made sense for the Commanders.
Well, people said, people suggesting, hey, what about this trade? What about that trade? One of the things that came up is the Niners would never trade Aiyuk in conference. That's interesting. The Commanders just traded Dotson in division. They're playing him twice a year. So, and that trade didn't make a whole lot of sense. But if it nets Washington a third round pick and they can turn around, and then the question, I guess, is this, and this is the part that's really wild on the Aiyuk front, is some people are saying, well, why would the Niners want that third round pick? Because they're going to spin it to another team for a different wide receiver. But man, I mean, look at the wide receiver machinations that you would be doing in late August. If that were indeed the case, let's say the Niners got, I don't know, player X and a third round pick from the Commanders, and they make the deal. And now Aiyuk's a Commander. And now they're going to turn around and try to find another team that's going to give them a receiver that they like for that Washington third round pick. That seems really highly unlikely. I mean, I guess Cortland Sutton, Devontae Adams, I guess it could happen. It's never happened before, man. It's all unprecedented. So we're all,
right.
At this point, it's like, good luck, John. Good luck, Kyle. But I'd like to say I'm with you, but since these are totally unprecedented moves, it's like, I don't know what to say about it. We'll just have to wait and see.
I think Cortland Sutton's pretty happy. Did you see I saw a video of Cortland Sutton. He was walking off the field after the last Broncos preseason game, and there's some dad, talking over the railing to Cortland Sutton. And as Cortland Sutton's walking in the locker room, and the dad stops him by handing Cortland Sutton his baby. It just passed it to him like it was a beer. And now all of a sudden, Cortland Sutton's standing in the tunnel thinking about walking to the locker room, but he's got this dude's baby and the guy's taking a picture. So I don't think Sutton's, especially with Bo Nix being named the starter in Denver, I don't think he's going anywhere. So I don't think that's an option now. Yeah, the easiest way, I think, to win a Super Bowl is to pay Brandon Aiyuk the $30 million that if you asked him to sign for 28 the day before the draft, he probably does it, but they didn't. And here they are. Here we are. And it ain't fun. And it's the bad vibe summer that they haven't been able to shake. It has been a little weird around the 49ers, to the point where more people are calling me to not talk about how great this team could be, but more people are telling me, in conversations I'm having on other shows with other hosts, they think a crash is coming.
A crash?
I hope they're wrong. Not a crash, but they think that the 49ers are just going in the absolute wrong direction. A team that's trying to get to the Super Bowl should be traveling in. And I would agree with them. I would agree with them at this point in time in the year. Now,
it's very difficult to keep it together. It's very difficult to keep it together when you get this many good players, for sure. Yep. This is the challenge of, there's challenges at the beginning, and then there's different challenges when you get 6-7 years in. By the way, the Seahawks have just consummated a trade that is the kind of trade that I want to see the 49ers make. All right.
The Michael Jackson deal?
No, they actually made another deal. They traded Darrell Taylor, their edge rusher, to the Chicago Bears for a 2025 6th-round pick. So Darrell Taylor is now a Chicago Bear, and Ryan Poles, and Darrell Taylor is an athlete. I mean, this guy coming off the edge. Now, I'm pretty sure John Schneider would never want to trade him to the Niners. So I bet you, and they just traded Mike Jackson, the cornerback, to the Panthers on Friday for a pick. Now they're trading Darrell Taylor to the Bears for a 2025 6th-round pick.
The pick was a 7th-round linebacker out of Michigan. I think Michael Bennett's the guy's name. So, it's not like they got
Michael Barrett.
Michael
the
Barrett,
coverage linebacker. Yeah. So that's not bad. That's not bad coming. That's a nice little return for Seattle. But this one's interesting too, because the 49ers, Darrell Taylor was on that short list of defensive ends that people were saying, 6 weeks ago, hey, this guy might be available at the cutdown. And the Niners are one defensive end short. Now, Darrell Taylor, Joseph Osai from Cincinnati. Now that Darrell Taylor is a Bear, he goes into a situation where the Bears have Montez Sweat. Now they have Darrell Taylor. They have Austin Booker, the rookie from Kansas, who has been outstanding. And maybe and Daniel Hardy. Again, and Khalid Kareem, the former Notre Dame star, and Dominique Robinson. There's a lot of talk out of Chicago that the Bears are going to cut Dominique Robinson, their defensive end, who's about 6'5", 260 or so. He played at Miami of Ohio. He used to be a wide receiver. He was a quarterback, I think, then he became a wide receiver. Now he's a defensive end. He's 26. He's super fast off the edge. That could be, now that Taylor's a Bear, you might see Dominique Robinson either traded or cut before.
I've watched him. I'm tell you, from what I've seen, he's unimpressive. But Kassar gets his hand on him. Make different new situations for players is something that always needs to be considered and factored. So, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Drake Jackson.
That's a big. First of all, Chicago, looks like one of the up and coming teams in the conference for sure.
Dude,
Seattle, of course, is a divisional opponent.
The Bears with an offense, I don't even know if I'm ready for that level of world to live in. I've never seen it. I wouldn't even know what that looks like. So,
well, they got weapons, man.
Yeah,
they got weapons. They got Gilbert, they got DeAndre Swift, they got Roshan Johnson, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, not to mention Keenan, Odunze, Moore. I mean, they got guys. They got dudes.
Hey, let me ask you about this. It's one other element from this week's of practice about the Niners that I wanted a little clarification on from you since you were there all week. It seems Renardo Green has been moved to outside corner. They're not going to play him at nickel. They're not thinking. Is there any why there that you can tell us about? What did Renardo Green do to either be counted among corners and not nickel corners anymore? Is that good for him? Is that bad for his playing time? Is that good or bad for anyone else? What do you think of that?
Well, they're just looking for the fit, and Lenore is just an awesome slot corner because the slot corner in the Niners defense replaces the strong side linebacker. You're in the box. You have to play the run, and you got to play it well, and Lenore does it. And he plays it at a really, really high level. So I think in an ideal world, they're looking for another outside guy and let Lenore play inside. Renardo Green has got the quickness to handle the two-way break inside, but he's a smaller, lighter, less physical run defender. So Mooney and Green will be outside as the ones week one, and I think Lenore will be inside at the slot. But yeah, Renardo Green looks great. To me, Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa are the two guys that are going to contribute right away. They're going to be in the mix right away in that secondary, and they're both tremendous young players.
Let's go into some super chats here, Larry. I see you got a few starred. What do we got? What are the good people dropping some nice coin on today's channels to ask us?
Yeah, we got this one from David E. He says, have you guys heard that Ricky Pearsall had a pre-existing shoulder injury prior to the draft? No wonder Aiyuk is playing hardball. Yeah, now this is a article that was put out, I believe, by Mike Silver. Mike Silver reported, he went on with Copeland and Tolbert on KMBR and said that, he said the other component is that Pearsall, who looked amazing, the 1.5 practices he was actually healthy since they drafted him, Silver said, but he has a shoulder thing now that is now recurring and worrying over the long haul, something they knew about before they drafted him and were hoping wouldn't be a thing. Oh my God, this just drives me absolutely bananas. Okay, so of all anybody who does any kind of weightlifting, any kind of sports training knows that there are certain body parts that when you have injuries, you really have to flesh them out and figure out if it's a chronic situation or not. And the shoulder is one of them. Anybody who's had multiple surgeries on a shoulder usually is incredibly compromised. Recurring shoulder injuries are common, especially in football. If this guy had a shoulder injury going back to college, and now he's not playing at all because of a shoulder injury, that's negligence, man. That is negligence.
I used to draft guys who didn't have 2 ACLs. Why do you keep doing that? Why are you drafting guys who are damaged goods before you even play them?
And yeah, you'd have to ask kind of the 49ers, what do you do
now? Yeah, what did you know about the shoulder injury, and when did you know it? Because God, that would have been, there was an awful lot of receivers right there. You could have had Xavier Legette. You could have had Lad McConkey. You could have had virtually anybody in that second tier of receivers. You went for this guy, and now you're telling me he had pre-existing shoulder injuries.
A player that nobody had going in the first round. Nobody.
Yeah, very frustrating. That is very, 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 very frustrating.
David E., thank you for the super chat. Like and subscribe, everyone. We haven't said that, I don't think, once today. Like and subscribe. Both channels. Thank you very, very much.
My ball, Zach Ertz, says Raider fans would celebrate a preseason W. Man, good for them. They got Gardner Minshew. Multisanti, why can't the Niners trade Aiyuk for picks, then use those picks to make a run at Devontae Adams or Higgins or another receiver that could be on the block? Multisanti, you're right. They could. They absolutely could. The reason that I guess Damon or I or anybody would be skeptical is that we've never seen that before. I mean, literally, we've never seen a team in August trade for draft picks that they were then going to spin to a third team for an existing receiver. And then like if they can make that trade today, let's say today they got a player and a third from the Commanders. Ayuk's a Commander. Niners then say, hey, we want to turn that third into a receiver. Okay, they call the Raiders. Would the Raiders give you Devontae for a third? I don't think so.
No way.
Would the Bengals give you T. Higgins for a third?
No way.
I doubt that. So I don't know. I don't know. Lucien LeChance the fourth.
Lucien LeChance.
Who is that again? Who's Lucien LeChance?
I don't know.
Jockey?
It's I'll say this. It's Lucien the Chance the fourth.
Yeah, I think it's a jockey.
Speaking of, there's a great chance, he says, the 49ers won't win the Super Bowl with Aiyuk. Hell, they did that last year. Trade him, re-sign Trent, draft Travis Hunter or someone else on a rookie deal.
Next year. 2025.
Right.
That doesn't help us this year. James Foster, can someone give Ryan Williams some damn credit? Why?
Who?
That's the agent.
Yeah. What has he done? What has he done right now?
Well, what's he done? Exactly. He's had his player demand a trade, say he wants the biggest bag, turn down the biggest bag. I mean, how do you go on a podcast and say I want the biggest bag, then get offered the biggest bag and say, you know what, I want to win?
Right. Brandon Aiyuk went from sort of universally loved in the Bay Area to now half the fans are just ready to be done with him. So, great job. Great job. It's like Kevin Durant's career and his buddy. What's his Rich Kleiman? Like, dude, you're representing one guy and you've taken that one guy and reduced him to a journeyman who can't win in the playoffs anymore. Like, you had one career to manage, and Kevin Durant's career has been so mismanaged, it's ridiculous. So,
yeah. Way to get away from Steph, man. You really, that was an awesome move. Blood Moon says, what to make of Silver's comments of the 49ers knowing, what do you make of Silver's comments regarding the 49ers knowing about Ricky's shoulder pre-draft? So they were already questions about his health. Shaking my damn head, not good if true. Oh my God.
So yeah, here's the deal. It's like every issue in this preseason, whether it be Pearsall, his injury, Aiyuk, or Trent Williams. If these things are taken care of by the time the regular season comes around, no one will ever talk about him again. If Ricky, people are saying, "Oh, Pearsall's a bust. Pearsall's a bust." We don't know. We haven't seen him play. We don't know what Ricky Pearsall is, other than right now he appears to be too injured to even get on the field, which is a big red flag to start a career with. But we don't know. Ricky Pearsall could be fabulous at this. We just don't know yet. And for there to be so much uncertainty about a first-round draft pick while you're having wide receiver issues with 4 quarters of preseason football left to play before we start doing this for real, it's not an optimal situation for the 49ers to be in, and they're in it. And if they did draft a player with an injury history who has already proven himself too injured to get out there and play, yeah, it doesn't add up to looking good at all.
At this point, it's like people just are like, I don't care about the labor pain. Show me the damn baby.
Right.
It's time to play football. Hey, one thing to watch for tonight, by the way, with the Raiders. So you sit there and you say, well, the Raiders are a terrible watch, and they are. And the Raiders are going nowhere. They're a bad football team. But as far as what to watch tonight, one thing to watch for that I thought was really interesting. There was an article written earlier this week from Bleacher Report about just guys that might be surprises that are on the roster bubble. And they went team by team, and they're like guys who could be traded before the season started. And with the Niners, of course, they went with Aiyuk. But with the Raiders, they went with Tyree Wilson. And Tyree Wilson is 6'6", 275. He was the 7th pick in last year's draft. And the speculation is that the Raiders are so disappointed in what they've gotten out of Tyree Wilson that they may want to recoup some draft capital and trade him at a loss this summer at the cutdown. Now the Raiders do this all the time. They drafted Alex Leatherwood a couple of years ago, and he was a bust. And now they're drafting Tyree Wilson, and he's a bust. But you look at Chris Kasarik and what he did for Arden Key and what he did for so many different defensive linemen that kind of washed out in other spots. This would be one. I look at the Niners and say, they are inside their Super Bowl window. They are going to have 10 defensive linemen, 5 defensive ends, 5 defensive tackles. Robert Beal's their 4th defensive end. Alex Barrett is their 5th defensive end. Alex Barrett's just a practice squad guy. If you could somehow move some draft capital in the future and get the Raiders to give you Tyree Wilson, that would be the kind of buy low on a high upside, lottery ticket that I'd be very interested in taking if I were the 49ers. A guy like Tyree Wilson, if Chris Kasarik could get it out of him, could be the final piece to the puzzle that vaults you over the top in the NFC and into that Super Bowl and maybe even a Super Bowl win. I mean, he's an enormous man and an enormous talent. And there's a lot of people saying that he might be out there available here in the next week for trade. So that's the kind of piece that if you're watching the game tonight, take a look at Tyree Wilson if he plays and picture what he would look like in the Niners wide 9, because it could happen. Not saying it will, but it could.
I think we're through the super chats.
Yes, we are. Wait, let me double check. I think we have one more. No,
I've got a big invitation, everyone, to come on back at the 2-minute warning. That's when I'll be going live tonight with a little post-game and Damon, our last preseason post-game show. Larry, I'm guessing that you'll be on not too long afterwards. I think I'll be joining you this evening since my entire house will be asleep. No reason for us to not go late into the night together. So I'll be joining you guys at some point in time on your post-game show. And again, it's the best preseason game there could possibly be, because it's the last one, and we're almost through it all. And it starts for real. And again, next week we will have rosters and we will have a real season to talk about. And I can't wait for it to happen, man. It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be interesting. It's already been a little too interesting for, our own taste, if you don't mind me saying, here in this preseason. It was supposed to be a lot smoother. It's been crunchy peanut butter, not smooth peanut butter here for the 49ers. So let's see, man. It's
Matthew asked this question. He says, Larry, you do the 49er interviews. Why don't you ask about the shoulder? I just found out about the shoulder just in the last couple of days, and we have not been able to interview Pearsall for quite a while now. It's been a few weeks. So we will, believe me, I will be asking Lynch, Shanahan.
If you don't get to practice, you don't get to the podium, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's their but we will get an opportunity to talk to Lynch. We will get an opportunity to talk to Shanahan. We will be asking about that shoulder and what they knew before the draft and if it was a problem. And obviously, if he's going to miss any significant time, that's going to be a question that's bandied about a lot. And Travis Stewart says, hey, don't forget me.
There you go. Just throwing it in the Ganja jar. Thank you very much, Travis Stewart.
And Sean Crowley, thank you. Larry, you also do great work at all times. This is a big day today. Big day today. Damon, you're going live in 30?
Going live at 30. Yep, absolutely. And then tonight for a little post game. And can't wait, man.
What are you doing at 30? Are you going solo or you got a guest today?
Yeah, no, going solo. Looking forward to coming back around. It's funny, I reached out to Chase Sr. because, man, I've been watching his videos and his channel. He does such a good job. He's got a production crew that makes his just videos sizzle. I'm like, not only do I want to have you on the show to talk some 49ers, like there's shit I need to learn from you, dude. He's really good at what he does. So you have yourself a great show at 11. And then again, we'll be back at it together tonight at some point deep late into the evening, probably around 11:30 midnight. We'll be on together again, doing some post game. I will join your round table. And speaking of around the table, thanks so much to Sam's Chowder House for becoming a sponsor here on Wake Up. We're going to be going 3 days a week. Their official sponsorship begins in September, but we're so happy to onboard with them that we wanted to start giving it away to them. We are so thrilled that they are going to be with us. Larry and I are going to have an opportunity to come down and meet with us at some point in time this year down at Sam's Chowder House. Get the oysters, Rockefeller. Make sure you try that lobster roll. The place is just, it screams you're in California more than any other restaurant up and down the California coastline. So we're thrilled to have them. We don't have to explain to anyone what Sam's Chowder House is. Most of you know. It's not like an acai bowl where it's a hard sell to this audience. If you love a great restaurant in California, you're going to love Sam's Chowder House, and it's actually closer to Levi Stadium than any restaurant in San Francisco. So it's the perfect marriage for anyone who might be making that big road trip out to Levi Stadium from somewhere else in the country. You're going to want to get to Sam's.
No doubt. It's an incredible place. You're going to absolutely love it. And thanks to Paul Shankman for adding Sam's to Wake Up with Damon and Larry, and they'll be our sponsor of this 3-day-a-week extravaganza throughout the football season. And we're really, really excited to both dine there and also to have them as a sponsor. And if you're watching this from somewhere else and you're planning a trip to the Bay Area this fall or this winter for a Niner game, maybe check out Sam's Chowder House on a Saturday before coming out to the game.
Look, and I'm going to be the last guy to bag on San Francisco. There are enough people who will do that. But if you come to San Francisco, there's a very good chance that day you might not actually be in the state of California, as you would think about it as a tourist. Like, you don't see a lot of people rocking San Francisco with shorts and T-shirts. If you're looking for shorts and T-shirts, California, well, that's exactly where Sam's Chowder House is. Sunny, warm days down in Half Moon Bay.
Especially in the fall.
Very gray and very overcast and very foggy in the summer in San Francisco. September, October, that is our summer. So you can catch a good day, but there are almost nothing but good days down in Half Moon Bay. It's so beautiful down there. It's a great restaurant. You will love it. Trust us. And thank you so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe on both of these channels. Thank you very, very much for being here. And Larry, that's it. We've emptied the bag. We've emptied our preseason bag. Next week, it starts for real.
It's time for us to, I wrote down in an envelope Tyree Wilson, and I handed it to John Lynch, and I just said, hey, John, from old Trent Baalke, I wrote it down, and it says Tyree Wilson no matter what. So just remember that, John. Tyree Wilson no matter what. No matter what.
There you go. For Damon, I'm Larry and Trent Baalke and Ralph Barbieri, and that's going to do it for us. Have a great rest of your day. Tune in to Damon at 11 or tune in to me at 11. I'll have Chase Sr. with me, and then later today, catch me on the leader, catch me on 810 the spread, and then after the game. By the way, tonight after the game,
when you got to do that KGO hit, do you feel like you're slumming it a little? You know you do.
Yeah, I can still smell the fresh paint. Oh no, that's my Titanic reference. I can still remember the old people that worked at KGO. But yes, KGO hit, then a hit with Tommy and Carrie, and then a hit on KGO in the post game. But what I was going to say is, normally, we for the home games, we'll go down into the locker room. We don't start for an hour or so. We're not going to start at the 2-minute warning like Damon is, but as soon as the game's over, we'll start right away tonight. And because it's going to be a long night, right? It's a 7:00 game. The game's not even going to end until 10, 15. So we're going to get on right away and probably not go real long tonight. But catch me on the leader, catch me on 810 the spread for pre and post. And then, of course, catch the Krueger show after the game. And, of course, check out Damon as well on his channel. And that's going to do it for us. For Damon, I'm Larry. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.